Greetings, one and all, and welcome to another episode of Vampire the Masquerade Independence. Tonight we set our scene at the art gallery in downtown Independence, one owned by a Robin Silverberg. Now, this art gallery has a very special guest today. Not only is Kaylee Fletcher there, but she's brought a friend in order to see the prints, figuring as she is currently the ambassador to all non-vampires that are technically friendly within the city. She's under orders from him, perhaps, let's say, to bring him to the prince, and that's where we start our scene with Kaylee wandering into the main entrance of um, the main entrance of this art gallery, dressed rather oddly for her. Her hair is neatly styled, it's not sort of all over the place and messy. She's wearing a sleek business suit, it looks like, and she's still holding herself tall as she normally does, but she's a lot more subdued than she normally is, followed as she was by a taller man in a very, very neat silken satin green tunic with long tails and an equally extravagantly matching set of pants. And so he just kind of hangs around near the door, just looking around rather semi-impressed, let's say.
Um, Upon your arrival to the door of the museum, you you will be greeted by formal security guards and asked to please empty your pockets.
At this, the man looks at them rather incredulously, as though they've, like, kicked a small puppy that's owned by him. Kaylee just smiles softly and announces that they don't actually have any weapons. They don't need them.
The the security officer will very very politely point out that this is strictly protocol, ma'am. If you would please comply.
So they're just asking to turn out their pockets, yeah?
What he actually said was if you was if you would please excuse us, miss, this is strictly protocol. If you would please comply.
Yeah, sorry, man. Just go back over what they need to comply with. Is it just like a weapons check, basically?
Well, they're going to ask you to empty your pockets, and then they're going to go over you with a wand. It's all very very professional security sort of stuff. You will actually be asked if you would prefer a female security officer.
Kaylee just shrugs and sets down a handful of, it looks like, knickknacks, like small coins, things like that, varied and far flung from across the world. The man, meanwhile, just laughs and gestures at the fact that he doesn't actually have pockets on his clothing, except he does draw a pen out of one of the sleeves and hands it over, announcing, "Well, you might want this then. It is, after all, mightier than the sword."
The officer will give a polite, if small, smile and just proceed to do a quick, well, okay, not a thorough pat down
Neither of
of,
them are carrying anything that they haven't announced.
fair enough, a the officer in charge will then speak into a mic, and a very well-dressed man in a three-piece suit will appear and offer a very polite bow as your things are returned to you very properly, and say, "Good evening. I am Seth McDowell. Um, you must be Miss um, Miss Fletcher, I presume."
Indeed, I am. I'm
And
quite surprised I haven't met before, to be quite frank, but I've been absent a lot recently. And this is the man who wishes to meet with the prince. This is the Duke of Defeat.
ah, and Seth will give a second bow and say, "It is an honor to make your acquaintance, Your Grace. If if you would please follow me, I will announce you to her Her Highness the Prince."
And as
Well,
they
it's
turn
good to see
around,
you. After you, mate.
okay, as they turn around, through the open door flies a hawk straight through the door over their heads and lands
Um,
at the far side of the room.
um, I'm really sorry about this, but with the current things that have happened lately, a a a security officer is actually going to draw a gun on you and say, "Identify yourself or be fired upon."
Well, I guess you're going to have to fire at a hawk because a hawk can't talk.
I hate to break this to you, my good man, but I think that's just a little bird.
I'm fairly certain that the staff would be aware that the warden can change his appearance into
No,
things,
just
but
bought it this month. No one knows yet. First time I'm using it.
oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you used it in the scene. I'm sorry. My bad.
Nope.
Um, the officer is going to holster his gun and step forward and proceed to shoo the thing out of the museum, just thinking this is very weird. Shoo, get, go.
It's going to shriek shrilly at the guard and proceed to like look at him with almost human-like intelligence.
Okay, that's a bit weird. And Seth Seth is going to, in an attempt to sort of sort things out as delicately as he can, um, with a charisma. Um, sorry, I just have to check something. With a charisma em- empathy, I guess. Yeah. Sorry. So that's four. Or I guess etiquette, because he's trying to keep things polite. So that's a total of 6. Sorry, just waiting for the dive stream.
As a bird is trying to be shooed and whatnot, it's going to hop up and
That is a total of 4 successes if his speciality in charisma counts.
What's the speciality?
His thing is in eloquence, as he says. Please excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, but if there is any shenanigans going on at this moment this evening, please end it now, as Independence has seen enough awkwardness of late. I would assume we could all agree on this, I believe, in a very proper Highland Scottish accent.
the bird's going to take flight once more and head off down a hallway. Just whatever open door entryways. As this is a museum, there are probably quite a few. Even so much as flying up to the second story.
Right. At this point, the prince has probably heard some commotion. She's not deaf. And she's going to open the door to her office and sort of step out in one of her long ball gowns. This one probably like a very deep crimson. Does she see the hawk?
Probably.
She's going to stop, look at the hawk, and she's going to use Auspex. So, hold on. Actually, she gets no successes. Oops.
All of the ones.
Well, she has no idea what you are. You're probably a bird.
If the honorable guest would please follow me, I will introduce you. And Seth will step forward to the prince, offer a polite bow, and say, "Please excuse me, my lady, but the Duke has arrived, as well as the and I'm sorry, I need a little bit of help with the names because my stutter's kicking in again. Our honored guests have arrived. Shall I see to the refreshments and the removal of our uninvited guests?"
Yes, that would be lovely, Seth. I shall be inviting Miss Fletcher and our dear Duke to my dining room for discussions.
Yes, madam. I will have the appropriate refreshments made available. And Seth is actually going to speak into a mic on his lapel. And when you all arrive in the dining room, the customary tray with the lightly simmering vintages is set, and everything is actually prepped for you.
Robin will offer Mr. McDowell a bright smile in thanks, and will motion for her guests to follow. So she's going to shoot another glance at this bird, because that's just weird.
Seth is actually going to use his charisma leadership to organize the removal of this feathered fowl, which is a total of 4 for that, and so that's 7 dice. Spending a willpower point so I don't look completely stupid. Because I've been rolling a lot of 1s today, so. So that is a total of 4 successes. So it's a fairly professional job. That's my eloquence kicking in again, if no one minds.
So Bryce, what do you do? They're trying to remove the bird, so
Well, it's just lazily flying around. When Robin notices it, it'll squawk at Robin and go in and land on her shoulder if she doesn't jump out of the way.
Robin is going to basically look at the bird, frown, and pluck a cracker off of the tray and offer it to the bird.
It raises its head indignantly.
And I believe Dave would like to enter, so.
And it's about this time that Eric made his way to the museum. Yeah, different three-piece suit than he was in last time he was here. Last time it was more of like a black and white theme. This one has more of a deep blue, and I'm just gonna go with just blue and black.
You will be very politely subjected to the same searches as the other two, and Seth will greet you and check his appointment book to see that your name is actually on the proverbial list, as it were. Oh, good evening, Master Thorn. How are you this evening?
I have no complaints. And during the search, he emptied his pockets, and so that the contents of his pockets could be looked over. There's a pad, a pen, his wallet, a smartphone, and there's also a small toolkit, probably used for fixing small electronics. Here, it's nothing you could turn into a weapon. The tools would probably just break in the process. And there's also a lockpick kit.
I'm just trying to think. Kitty, would you want is it okay for them to actually carry these things, or would you prefer that each guest's certain elements be tagged and given back to them upon them actually leaving the premises?
I think things like that, they're small, they wouldn't really matter. Anything that's not dangerous, Robin doesn't really care about. Unless, like, it's something you could really use to do some harm, but no. She wouldn't care about this, and, she's never confiscated that from Eric before.
Okay, so after you've been very, very professionally looked over, your items will be given back to you, and Seth will usher you into the room. The esteemed Mr. Thorne, milady.
Oh, Eric, nice of you to join us. She's still kind of looking warily at this bird that's on her.
Seth will actually enter the room and stand beside the prince. And Seth will actually actually, just a second, let me check something. I do not have animal can at this point, unfortunately. So, would that be just a straight charisma attempt?
-1 dice, because if you don't have animal can, then you default on the roll.
Okay. Seth is going to try and offer the bird his arm so that the prince can conduct her business without having a visitor on her shoulder.
Bird will hop over to the pro-offered arm.
Oh, okay. So you don't want me to roll?
No, as I am not an actual animal.
Okay. There you are, madam. And Seth will just stand at at ease until someone needs something.
Well, finally, after all that has calmed down, Robin will turn to her two fairy guests, as it were, the Fae in the room, and she will offer both of them a warm smile.
Of the two Fae, the man is sitting, and Kaylee seems to be standing maybe 5 or 6 feet behind him, and the general guy's not a servant to someone does.
Robin will arch a brow at this, having never seen Kaylee look like this before, but she'll play it off and go to take a seat at the probably the head of the table. Would either of you like anything? I have plenty of teas and other assortments. Seth always keeps me well supplied with goodies for my guests.
The man raises a hand slightly and shakes his head. No, thank you, Your Highness. And then he does look over his shoulder. Carla, you are dismissed. I will meet you outside when I'm done here. At that, Kaylee just curtsies slightly before turning to leave.
Robin will kind of I don't think how she would react to that. She's kind of confused, but she'll shrug. Right then. So, you wish to speak with me?
Of course, isn't it customary for people to speak to you when they arrive in the city?
Indeed, though, I've had a few I've had to track down myself before they would show their faces to me.
Well, I've done a bit of research before I came to see you. After all, I wish to be informed of who I'm meeting. I believe I spoke to a few of, what do they call, the neophytes.
Ah, neonates, yes.
Ah, my mistake. So from what I can tell, you've actually got quite a lot of problems here in the city.
Yes, quite a lot more than I would have originally expected from independence. The Sabbat, sure, we are in Texas, but some of the other problems, not so much.
Well, it's these other problems that have really brought me here. You see, I've actually been watching the city for a little while, and it seems to be some sort of crossroads for these supernatural beings. Now, I'm not really one that knows much about the Sabbat. I haven't really spent a lot of time around vampires, so to speak. But I have got a lot of expertise in the other sorts of things that they've been mentioning.
Which would be most helpful. After all, there is a lich wandering the streets, and I've been hearing rumors about skinless dogs. My childer has mentioned it a few times, and I've heard it from a few other of the neonates.
Oh, yes, I spoke about that to the neonates that I spoke to the other night. They seemed most distressed by them, and for good reason, I think. I did give them a few warnings and tell them how to deal with it, though. So hopefully that should just clear it all up then.
Good, good, good. Though I should probably, if you may, or if you would, help me pass that information along to my warden, as well as my hound and sheriff. I don't believe you spoke to them that night, or did you? She sort of tilts her head.
Let me see. Now, I believe I spoke to someone called, I think it was Crimson, and then there was a Miss Everly. Mr. Lucas Cobb, I think it was, and the last one was a little thing called Chell.
Robin's going to blink at Chell being called a little thing, because she's always known Chell as the 6-foot giant, but she's going to just nod a little bit at that and go, "Ah, so you have spoken to my hound, then?" Well, perhaps then I should get a hold of her and ask her to pass that on to Jason and Amelia.
Well, you have the information then. I'm sure that you are more than capable of doing with it what needs to be done.
Of course, of course. Sometimes my neonates don't exactly pass everything on to one another in the most effective of ways. You can understand my caution.
Every time Jason's name is mentioned, if anyone's paying attention to the bird, it'll ruffle its feathers.
So I think this moves us on rather nicely to what I can actually do for the city.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty of things you can do, mostly in consulting at the moment, considering you seem to have information that most of us don't have, and I think we can be mutually beneficial on that, considering we might have some things that you don't know.
Oh, I'm sure there are. But I mean, I can actually do quite a bit more for the city than that.
Hmm. And might I ask what you could do for my city, after all? And she cants her head. I'm afraid I don't know much about your people.
Well, for starters, I can help you get rid of that Carly.
And she kind of looks at you very confused. I'm sorry, get rid of who?
Carly? You don't mean to say that she hasn't actually told you her real name?
Well, I suppose she's always gone by just Kaylee.
Well, I see then. Perhaps you would actually like to tell me what you actually know about her then.
To be honest, not a whole lot. I mean, I don't quite understand the Fae as well as I would like, but she has been very helpful. She's been very diplomatic and useful in regards to court life.
I see
Though,
then. So you don't actually know any of her history then, do you?
no, I assumed perhaps I could trade some of my history for her history eventually, but there's not been much time to discuss those sort of things with Miss Fletcher.
So perhaps she's being a little bit evasive on what she can actually answer then.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last thing? It kind of cut out for me.
So she's perhaps been a little bit evasive in what she actually answers then.
Yes, a bit, but I figured that just came down with being, something different amongst a bunch of kindred.
Well,
Well,
can
there
we
are several
trust
of us who,
you?
sorry,
After you.
after all, there are several of us who've, even if joking, made, at least, not threats is the word I'm looking for, but have hinted towards wanting to eat Miss Fletcher.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to chime in here because I have a speciality,
Mm-hmm.
attentive, if it counts. That's a total of 6 successes on the bird, or 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 5 if it doesn't.
What are you being attentive about?
Marcus?
I'm I'm sorry. It's the fact that every time that the one's name or title is mentioned, the the bird does that thing it does.
Oh, so you're paying attention to the bird's body language then, or being attentive to that.
Yes.
I think that
Um.
sounds fair. What do you think, Bryce?
Well, especially since he's on his arm,
Yeah.
I would say that you definitely get the feeling that this is somehow connected to Jason in some way, shape, or form.
Um.
Or
In
at least it recognizes Jason's name.
if if you don't mind, then based on those successes, um, Seth will just say very calmly, um, if if you can hear me, good one, I I think now might be a good time to make an appearance. Very quietly to the bird.
And the bird will nod its head sharply, hop off your arm, and 3 combat turns later, the bird morphs into a rather imposing figure of Jason.
So how do Eric and the Duke react to this then? And also Seth.
Seth will sort of raise an eyebrow and just kind of shake his head, maybe mostly amused, but also somewhat annoyed at the shenanigans earlier. Just being a consummate professional, anything that causes a disruption does not look very well on him or the house that he serves. So take that as you will, but he's not being hostile or anything.
People that know what to look for would recognise certain amounts of surprise and no small amount of suspicion levelled towards the hawk-turned person. Unfortunately, for those who do not get more than three successes on their perception checks, they'll just not really notice anything. It seems as though the Duke has kept his calm.
You wanted a perception empathy?
If you want to roll it, that was a charisma performance check.
Yep. I'm going to activate Auspex 1 to reduce my perception difficulties by a number equal to my Auspex rating.
Robin got 7, so... Well, I probably should have activated my Auspex and I would have gotten more than 7, but still.
Four successes.
Seth also had 4 successes.
Ah, yes. This would be Jason. She motions to the hawk-turned man, kind of frowning a little bit at him, almost playfully. He would be our warden of Clan Gangrel. Of course, that's probably quite obvious with the tomfoolery he's just done.
Jason, for his part, upon being called tomfoolery, is going to laugh at this. I'm sorry. I just discovered this awesome thing I can do. Very much childlike demeanor coming off of him.
Seth just kind of quietly face palms behind the prince.
Either way, she's going to turn back to the Duke at this point for offering Jason a place to sit at the table, obviously welcoming him.
And he takes a seat. And as Jason has been flying for a couple days since discovering this power, he actually looks clean for once.
Excuse me, my warden. Would you like some form of refreshment?
If you would, Seth, that would be much appreciated.
Very good, sir. Please excuse me. And Seth will take an extra glass and pour you some of a simmering vintage. And very, very quietly take his spot again.
And since you asked earlier, Kitten, the way Eric reacted was he stood off to the side, very calmly watching what was going on, watching the interactions between everyone. Occasionally he would look to the hawk, One time he raised a brow, but didn't really do much of anything about it. His face, or his expressions were very calm during all of this. And like, even when people had a reaction, he contrasted them by not reacting. And if anyone looked, his eyes felt more predatory than most others. It was like looking into the eyes of a shark. Cold, dead, and predatory.
So this is the warden that you were telling me about, is it?
Yes, this is Jason. As I said, Clan Gangrel. Quite adept at tracking. She nods.
You'll have to forgive me, I've only had a few days to really read up on the vampire history. I'm not entirely sure what a gangrel is.
As a Toreador myself, I suppose. Jason, perhaps you can explain your clan a bit better than I.
And Jason nods and sombers up a little bit. Well, from what I've come to understand, we're more of a wilder sect of the vampires. Uh, Liking more of the nature than indoors compared to most. Very self-sufficient in our own way. Uh, though I've heard whispers that while we are part of the Camarilla, most gangrel are very independent in nature. As the warden, I've been mainly on the outskirts of the city, though this flying thing is going to make things a lot easier coming and going. Though, with that being said, he's going to turn quickly to Robin. I've not seen or heard any sign of the Garu on the outskirts anymore. It has kind of died down.
Garu, that would be... Is it a werewolf?
Yes, a were creature of some sort.
Oh, I see, I see. You really do have a host of problems in the city, don't you?
Unfortunately, lately, yes.
Though we have endured through all of that. Surprisingly so. She kind of smiles fondly.
At this point, I'm going to ask, um, since Seth isn't very good at hiding things as such, um, I'm going to do a flat charisma roll, since I don't have sorry, what is it to hide one's emotions?
Manipulation, subterfuge, charisma, performance, one or the other, I think. Guys, help me out.
Depends on how he's doing it. If he's just wanting to flat out hide, then it'd be a subterfuge roll, I reckon. If he's wanting to mask it with like a pleasant smile, then like basically if you want to say stone faced, I'd say subterfuge. But if he's wanting to put on an act, then I'd say performance.
Okay.
Either way, I'd say charisma.
Okay, so just a flat charisma to try and stay stone faced, but otherwise, if people can beat, well, actually, let me just roll first before his stuff. 2 or 3, or I mean, sorry, yes, 2 or 3 if the speciality counts, which I don't think it does. But if someone can beat a 2, what they get is, well, there's no surprise about it. After all, she's in charge, so he's hiding very clear affection for his employer. Strictly trying to be professional.
Robin is going to then look to Eric. Mr. Thorne, you haven't spoken since your arrival. What are your thoughts on all this?
I wouldn't know where to start with giving any advice, and I can't confirm most of the words you've said about the skinless dogs or the. I don't even know if the lich is still within the city limits. When was the last time we've seen it?
I've had no reports of the Lich in quite some time, nor has he appeared on my cameras. Originally, Mr. Maverick was sort of informing me about such situations, so I have not heard from him in several nights. It's been reported to me that Mr. Maverick has gone missing.
I would change that from missing to taken.
Well,
This Maverick, who is it?
one of our 2 harpies.
Oh, right, I see them. So they actually do hold a position in this little council you have going on here.
Yes, Mr. Maverick holds a rather sizable position. The harpy's job is to remain unbiased between kindred, and their job specifically is to write down the boons that are exchanged from vampire to vampire. They're also cased with taking care of any social issues that pop up.
So recently you've had your harpy going missing, and perhaps something happened to your hound that I helped solve the other day. Do you think perhaps that someone is targeting your little council?
To be quite honest, that would not surprise me. It's not a secret that there aren't many down in the south that are happy that the Camarilla has a hold, nor are they happy that I have stayed so strong through all of this and kept my seat. After all, they did send a quite large threat our way, and we did take that individual down along with his accomplices, save for the one called Death, the one that they so brilliantly let get away. And she sort of rubs her temples.
Yes, I've heard about that one. It's quite ironic, really. The only one that survived and lived is the one that's called Death.
Yes, there is quite a lot of irony in that. And normally I would find such irony amusing if it wasn't so, well, All of my subjects can't be perfect.
Apparently not your assistant either.
Meaning Miss Fletcher? She kind of arches a brow.
If that is what she told you her name is, then yes.
Yes. You'll have to forgive me, I'm so used to calling her that. Any other name would... It doesn't quite register with me yet. Though I am curious. You said you would help me get rid of her. Why would I want to be rid of her? She's done nothing wrong so far.
So far might be the operative word there. You see, she has got a history, actually, at court.
You might hear knocking at the door about this time.
Seth, would you see who that is, please?
Of course, madam. Seth will go to the door. And just so that everyone's aware, Shell would have been asked to empty her pockets, and she would have been gone over with a wand upon entering the establishment. Seth will hold the door open and introduce the esteemed hound, Miss Shell, Your Highness, and offer a very polite bow as Shell comes into the room.
Ah, Mr. Simon, please have a seat.
Milady, I heard my presence was required. Sorry I'm late, though. And she's going to start moving over to one of the seats.
Quite alright, Shell.
Would you care for a vintage, Miss Simone?
I rather would. I would appreciate it, my good sir.
And Seth will close the door and provide you with a simmering vintage and take his spot again.
Please, don't mind me. Continue where you're off and where you were.
Well, you're looking at a bit different from the last time we met.
Oh. Shell's going to quirk her brow. And then she's going to look down and be like, oh yeah, that's right. This is how I really look like, love.
Getting a bit personal with the names, aren't we?
Perhaps a bit too much, but regardless, how have you been? It's nice to see you again.
I've been concerned with the state of the city.
And you're inquiring a bit further into it than what we managed to report to you?
And giving a few warnings and perhaps offering a better assistance than there already is.
Which is quite appreciated, I might mention.
I was just about to explain about how Carla isn't so good for where she is.
I'll continue on, active as if I never entered.
Well then, and he turns back to Robin, you see her real name is Carla, the Weaver's daughter. And she's actually a relative newcomer to the court. Well, relatively speaking, after all. Now, you see, she has actually been involved in numerous occurrences at court, We see she is just a jester there, at least where we are from. And the problem with all these little occurrences is they seem to come shortly after she integrates herself with the group. Trouble seems to follow her, you know, as does backstabbing.
Like what sort of backstabbing?
I must say backstabbing is not something new to the court, especially not amongst the Camarilla. Though, please, do you think she's a threat to my position? Or to my neonates? That is quite important to me, after all.
How much does she know about you all?
The prince chuckles. Me, not as much. However, and her eyes will float to the hound for just a moment before she'll look to the Duke again and she'll go. A lot of our neonates aren't very secretive with their life stories. A lot of them freely give information. In fact, some of them have actually angered a few people by doing so.
And how much does anybody know about this Caliph?
Well, my neonates tell me. Eric, Chell, and Jason. I believe you've all met her at one point or another. What do you know about her?
She likes the exchange of stories. And it's usually, like, for example, she's gonna look over at Robin as if to acknowledge that statement. I shared a couple of stories of my past in exchange for a silver sword, one of which, well, we found out through Fey blood, makes the sword is a lot different in that realm than it is when I see it in reality. So her shop seems to be full of rather odd things.
So you say she trades in stories. What type of stories have you been telling her?
Well, I told her about the gnomes that ambushed my party a long time ago.
So personal stories about your past. And what type of stories has she been telling you?
Usually things around history, or at least the ones surrounding the objects in question. So she talked about the sword having belonged to an angel, and she'll do quotation marks. Not exactly sure if it belonged to an angel, but considering I've seen it, it isn't very unlikely that it belonged to something.
So tell me, what do you actually know about her? Considering you don't even know her real name.
Not very much. If you wanted to find more personal things, I'd ask her girlfriend, Lennox. Or really, there's also your childer, Everly. She's done more personal meetings than I have.
Perhaps I'll have to question Everly about such things. Though, you say she's dating Lennox. And Robin's face goes a little bit flat at that. Interesting. Trouble seems to follow her as well.
I don't think that this is maybe some sort of coincidence, do you?
No, not if what you say is true. Perhaps I should call Lennox to court. Alone, without Miss Fletcher. Though I'm almost not sure if she would do so. She's almost inseparable from her, from what I've heard. And every time I've seen Lennox, Kaylee has been there.
Well, that does look a little bit suspicious, doesn't it?
Indeed, though I, of course, chalked it up to infatuation and puppy love. After all, Miss Fletcher is quite beautiful. I could understand why someone want her on their arm at all times.
Unless, of course, Karlach is just using this Lennox in order to integrate herself better into the vampire society. Perhaps to gain access to a group that she didn't previously have any intelligence on.
Well, then she would be playing the game that most of us do play in this court. But, as Lennox is under my protection more so than Kaylee would be, I shall have to have a word with her myself, and insist that she leave her companion behind. I won't have my neonates manipulated and used by someone.
Exactly. And that is why I have come to offer my services. You see, I'm a lot more freer with information about myself than Karlach is. And I can offer you a lot better advice than she can, no doubt.
And what advice would you give to me?
It greatly depends on what advice you are looking for. If it's for the Karlach situation, I believe you should get rid of her as soon as you can.
But how does one get rid of a fae? After all, she does have a companion, a cat, that she could send to spy if she wanted. And that's to say, I don't know her powers. I don't know what she can do. I mean, many of us, the gifts of the blood, can allow us to enter a room unseen, even avoid cameras or reflection. How do I know that I can get rid of her?
There are ways. I believe that I have some wards that might be able to help you.
That is 2 or 3, depending, successes on the Duke. In a perception empathy test.
Two line was that?
Just to maintain if he is actually being genuine about all of this, or if he's just trying to manipulate my employer into granting him access into the inner circle, kind of a thing.
Okie doke. 3 successes, he said.
Yes.
He appears to be sincere.
Okay.
So then, I have come to the understanding that she has become some sort of an advisor for you in your court, and something of an ambassador to those of us who aren't actually vampires within your city.
Indeed.
Now I ask you a couple of questions now. Would you rather have someone who has real experience at court, actually being someone who moves and shakes within the courtroom, rather than just the poor little jester, who actually tells you the truth, and is completely open about his history with you? Or would you rather have Miss Karlach?
There is the charm of Miss Kala. After all, I am fond of her. You can't blame me for such. However, right now fondness is trumped by need. And I need people who are competent and trustworthy at my side during all of this. I will not risk the city just because I feel a softness for one individual or another.
But of course, I wouldn't actually come to you saying this sort of thing if I couldn't actually handle myself, you know. I haven't gotten this far in life without going through a couple of duels and a few wars here and there.
Then you shall make an excellent addition to my council. And on that note, either way, if you agree to do such a task, what is it that I can do for you in return? After all, I'm sure you would like this to be mutually beneficial.
Of course, a business transaction goes both ways, doesn't it? I would first ask what sort of arrangements you had with Miss Carla.
With her, all she really ever asked for mostly was protection and stories, that sort of thing. And protection we can offer you, as well as the right of domain. By our tradition, the right of domain means that people can't essentially act a fool in your domain. If someone were to come into your domain and attack an individual, yourself or someone else, disrespect you in any way, they could be punished for it. And of course, falling under the protection of the Camarilla means that none of us will feed from you, unless you're willing.
Well, that sounds like a good starting point now, doesn't it?
Indeed.
Now, I'm sure that we are boring everybody else here, just speaking business. I'm sure that you and I can speak a bit further about this later, Robin.
Indeed. And she looks back to the rest of the group, curious if they have anything to say.
Chill shrug.
Well, perhaps we'd better start off on a better footing than you did with Carla. He moved to stand, slowly smoothing out his emerald green silk shirt. I am Owain, the Duke of Daffyd, formerly of Harlech in Snowdonia.
Robin will nod to this.
Now, is there anything else that I can answer for you?
I suppose I am curious what made you specifically interested in independence in the first place. A bit out of its way, isn't it?
Well, you see, there is an awful lot of supernatural happenings in the area. I took it upon myself to just come and have a look why. You see, there hasn't been a good war over there in England and Wales for quite some time now. And it's actually getting a bit boring, to be quite frank with you. And this place just seemed a little bit more exciting, what with all the happenings going on. So I thought I would bring myself and my little friends over here, and we could just see how we could help out, because it looks as though there's just a little bit of a war zone.
Got bored with the lack of French. You'd rather did trump them.
Robin's eyes narrow at you.
The French are an enemy of the English, and if there's one thing that I hate the most in the world, it's an Englishman.
Robin smirks a little bit and will.
Seth will actually smile and turn to Robin and sort of indicate as to whether he can add something to that. He's smiling.
Robin will give him a bit of a nod, and she'll be reaching for cup. I'm assuming he's already probably poured her a drink, and she'll be taking a drink to kind of hide her smirk behind it.
Well, having a problem with the English is one thing, of course, but I hope you don't have trouble with the Scots.
You mean the only other true part of the British Empire that is still giving it problems? I have nothing against Scots. They are very nice people. And most of them seem to hate the English just as much as the Welsh.
Seth just chuckles, although he's trying to cover his mouth, but you can actually see him chuckle at that.
Chelsea's grinning a bit, but she sits back in her chair and just looks at the rest of the group.
Robin will kind of just shake her head a bit. Though my accent has faded over the many, many years I've been alive, Chell, I am a child of France. Paris, to be precise.
And I'm a child of England. Nice to meet you. Excuse me, what? I didn't grow up in England, though.
Seth will just give a small look to Shell upon that small bit of cheek towards the prince. Very, very slight, just a.
No. Old blood rivalries aside, we are all kindred, at least, well, most of us. We're all supernatural, to be more inclusive.
Oh, I don't know. Speak for yourself.
Robin laughed. Either way. I'm afraid that the hour is going a bit early, and I have a few things I need to attend to, but if any of you would like to continue to use my dining room, please do. I'm assuming that, as the Hound and the Warden, you'd have quite a bit to discuss with our dear friend. And Eric?
Yes?
I've heard quite a bit about how well you've been doing with investigations and how useful you've been in that. If you wouldn't mind lending a hand in some of these matters, I could use somebody of your aptitude.
I'll do what I can.
Thank you, Mr. Thorne. Now, if you would all excuse me, and the prince would stand and make her exit.
And once Robin leaves, Eric's just going to look to the group and say, I believe I need to be on my way. I have a class to teach. Give a bit of a nod and turn towards the door.
Seth will, of course, be holding the door for the prince and the honored guests.
However, once he's out of the room, instead of going outside, he's gonna go approach Robin. He's not hiding that he's approaching her, he's just going to do it now that he's out of that room. walks up to her and says, I just wanted to inform you that Miranda is learning quickly, at least.
Well, that's quite good. Has there been any progress on figuring out what clan she belongs to or who made her?
None. None so far.
Well, I trust her in your care. I'm glad that she's
And
made progress.
he gives a bit of a nod to that. So, and also, if I may, what do we know of this one? And his head kind of slightly tilts in the direction of the room they just left.
Not a whole lot so far, but time will tell. I'm going to
How
speak.
much of what he has said is truth?
Again. So far, face value, it seems all true. But that's only face value. I've yet to delve into the depths of it, and I will delve into that. I'm going to speak with Kaylee at some point, me and her, one-on-one, and somewhere safe for her and I can speak.
Give a bit of a nod and say, I never take what a kindred says at face value, not with some substantial proof of what they're saying, whether they've provided it or if I've discovered it. These aren't kindred.
No, you're quite right, they aren't. But I do believe a kindred could look into such matters. Not going to look very well if I look into such things personally. And she looks Eric in the eyes. Do you think you could give me a hand in that?
Of course.
As always, I am most grateful for your help.
I only do whatever is necessary for the sect.
And she smiles. I believe you have a class to teach, Mr. Thorne?
I just need to ensure that the lessons I've taught to Miranda stick.
And with that, she nods. And she'll start heading back to her more private chambers.
With her leaving, he'll turn around and he'll head for the exit.
Hey Jason, has anything interesting popped up on your end?
As I told the prince before, the Garu is no longer on the outskirts of the city. Uh, Other than that, I haven't been in town in weeks. Been out trying to better improve myself as well as track down any incoming or outgoing signs of any activity, really.
Then I guess and then you've been told of the news then? Is some of the stuff that's been happening? Or
No, like I said, I try to stay on the outskirts, and if someone needs me, usually they get to Isabel, and Isabel knows how to get to me.
well, there was kind of a recent case. A man, I believe he was actually in your coterie, has gone missing. Mitch Maverick?
Yeah, I heard about that. Isabel said she was going to be looking into it, but again, inner city problems, unless called upon, tend not to be my problem anymore.
Well, the bodies that were involved with the case were also dumped on the outskirts, so I just wanted to know if you knew anything about that.
No, I did not come across them, and therefore was not informed.
Alright. Well, Logan and Sin were the ones that discovered them, along with Miss Anna, I believe.
Yes, I really have been meaning to head back into their territory and accept their gracious offer to join with them to get to know them better. Unfortunately, time has not permitted.
Please do if you get the chance. I'm afraid they don't exactly trust me, and will say with good reason.
Well, I will attempt to do it sooner rather than later.
Alright, not really sure if there are any other issues. We haven't found any whereabouts of the Lich recently. No telltale signs of where the orb is. There's some interesting lady in town apparently, but I figured that was someone else's concern than ours.
Indeed. And, if you don't mind, I need to talk to Robin really quick while I have her for a moment.
Go right ahead.
And with that, Jason pushes back from the table and he stands up and heads out the door to where Robin had exited.
Robin was just about to head through the door when once again she stopped, and she will turn to Jason and offer a smile.
And Jason will make a fast track towards her and nod at her. Just to inform you, I am picking up some property on the outskirts of town. Small little campsite, be it.
Ah, glad to see you finally picked out some domain, Jason.
Well, I can't be a leech to Celio and Isabel forever. And with this way, it'd be a little bit of income and, it's a better way to get a hold of me. I'll be managing it myself at the moment, but, he, tries to pat down, trying to find a pencil and paper type deal, and comes up short. Sorry, I can't seem to find a pencil. If I tell you the number to the offices of the property I'm picking up, will that be sufficient? Probably be a better way of getting in touch with me when you need me.
That would be most helpful, Jason. Could you pass that along to Seth? He tends to take care of my paperwork.
Indeed.
Thank you. Also, quite impressive that you showed up as a hawk. She arched a brow.
Well, it's faster travel. I don't own a vehicle myself, so I'm getting tired of the cab rides.
Much more efficient and much more eco-friendly, I must say.
Indeed. And I'm also trying out a new one. I can, starting to get the grasp of becoming a bear.
That might be useful in combat situations.
Indeed. Or just tromping around the forests.
That sounds quite fun, Jason. Oh, speaking of tramping around the force, have you met the gang girl that live out that way?
Yes, I did meet them with two of the other neonates, and it was when we were first tracking the Garu. They told me that they'd help out in tracking it down, but I've seemed to have lost sight of it, and I was going to go ask them if they've heard anything about it.
Excellent, excellent. Then you're on top of things. I was going to suggest that you become my liaison between us and them. After all, they are independent, gang girl.
Indeed, I will be more than willing. They seem more than willing to help us as long as we respect their territory, which, uh, with the office I was holding, I told them I would pass word along to the kindred of the city to try to stay out of their territory and respect it. As it is outside the city, I figured that wouldn't be an issue.
Indeed, indeed. Outside of the city is none of our concern. Though once they cross over into our limits, they are into our territory. I will leave that to you as my warden. After all, you do guard our border.
Indeed. Anyway, I have to take my leave. Enjoy your evening.
And you as well, Mr. Bell.
And with that, Jason goes to track down Seth. And I'm sorry, I'm going to just gloss over this really quick because I do have to get going. He hands over his phone number and heads outside, finding a secluded place on the grounds to transform back into the Hawk to make his leave.
Seth will take the phone number, place it in his pocket. He will need to clarify things with the prince as to what is actually required, because, yeah. But before we end the scene, I suppose, and do another one, perhaps, Seth will ask the Duke if he would like something to eat or drink, um, or if there's anything that he can do to make his stay more comfortable. And other people can take it from there. Seth will be doing the butler thing.
Well, thank you kindly for the offer, my good man, but I think I need to be heading off right about now.
Very good, sir. Shall I ask for your car to be brought around?
Oh, that need not be necessary. You see, I walked here with Carla. I actually quite enjoy walking around this city. It's very new, you know. There isn't that much old architecture around here, and it's quite refreshing.
Very good, sir. I'm quite happy that you are enjoying your visit to Independence. Um, I do very much look forward to seeing you again in the future. And Seth will hold the door open for him and give him a polite bow upon his exit. Good night, sir.
I guess I shall be taking my leave as well.
Very nice to see you as always, Miss Simone.
Likewise, and if you ever need me, just give me a call.
I shall, miss. Thank you very much. Seth will give him a polite bow.
Chell will likewise.
Well, I think if there's no other business, we can probably leave off the scene there. Okay, doesn't seem like there is any other business then. That's awesome. So, we finish up on all those within the council heading on their own separate ways. Robin certainly has something new to think about. Eric definitely has a new person to keep his eyes upon. Seth's perhaps made a new friend, I'll say. Chell's gotten a lot larger in someone's eyes, and Jason's definitely become a very interesting person nowadays, what with his hawkish abilities. So I will just say in finishing, thank you players for playing, thank you watchers for watching, and good night on another episode of Vampire the Masquerade Independence.